everybody know they need to be, ready to compete appropriately based on the time of the year.
Like with Paul Goldschmidt, it's weird asking if someone who hit 34 home runs had 8 if you guys should do better offensively, but should Paul Goldschmidt do better offensively this coming year?
Yeah, you know what? I find that interesting too, and I do understand the question. Um, I do appreciate the fact that he's coming off a super high bar that people, which he embraces, and I won't speak for Goldie. He'll be in here tomorrow to speak for himself, but from my lens, one of the reasons we took off is he was able to, and the offense was able to kind of go once we got into July a little bit more. Um, so you look at the numbers in total, still pretty good numbers. And, I don't want to get into a comparison of is he going to be better and we got to live up to a certain number. I just want us to live up, and this falls into the question about Goldie. Just live up to standard of being as consistent as possible and what that looks like. I always think we can do things better, and we're always seeking for continual improvement. So, he may be the first to tell you that, and I probably will, that, he'd like to do better. But, pretty darn good. He's a good player across the board, and he helps us win a lot of games, which is ultimately what it's about. And I know that's where his head's at. So, really, you look at numbers. We want productive numbers, and you want those numbers that they all matter. Don't get me wrong, but we want those numbers that, in that close game, we're moving that run or we're driving that run in, that kind of thing. And those are the numbers that ultimately matter the most.
We've written a lot about his defense over the past year, but for you, now that this past season is over, looking back, was there an aspect to his defense that you're like, wow, that was key?
Yeah, I mean, we figured that out relatively soon. It just settled down our collective team defense, which we talk about fairly frequently internally and a little bit outside. But yeah, I mean, his metrics all went up from the previous year. Which is pretty darn good, and had a tremendous year defensively, and just across the board helped everybody. He's a residual player, meaning he's going to have value to other guys around him in different areas. Definitely defense, one of them, but there wasn't one area that stood out. Just his collectiveness of him taking care of his own position, but B, also being a high IQ of situational awareness, which is something we talk about. Team defense is a big part of that.
You worked a lot on it seemed last spring on defensive situations, based
Right.
on situations, those areas improved
Mm-hmm.
dramatically. Is there a theme this spring, or is there an emphasis on one aspect of the game for you?
Yeah, just continue to. I mean, the themes I think will remain fairly consistent. I mean, we try not to be overreactionary. We had some clarity to what last offseason looked like in some areas that we need to improve upon. We did it. We were, as you mentioned, intentional about it. We'll continue to be that way. Our field staff was just in Jupiter for 3.5 days, early part of this past week, and really summarizing what we talked about with our players, and summarizing what collectively we have kind of figured out over the last couple weeks to months, and making sure we're communicating individually and creating clarity with the player. I think that's really important that we're doing it with the player, and we are. And they're having some feedback of what we're doing, how we're doing it, why we're doing it. And then collective. So spring training is not about showing up to figure it out. It's about showing up to execute. And we've also doing that in a collective sense. So our defense was improved. Our base running was improved. We feel like there's still layers to what that looks like. We want to build off what we did and don't take for granted. And then also some other areas that we want to continue to grow as well and be even more consistent.
Does the offseason seem like it's been a whirlwind for you with everything that's kind of changed in your life?
Yeah, it's I try not to ever make it about me, but I do appreciate that I'm in a position of responsibility, and people are going to pay attention to it. But yeah, it's been an atypical off season in some regards. There's been some blessings, and there's been some things that have been difficult with the passing of my mom, but that's life. And but a lot of the off season's been fairly typical as well, and tried to embrace all the things that have come away and appreciate the blessings as well.
Mike, a little bit ago, Nolan Gorman was talking about being down in Florida and working with Russ and sort of the technological integration as well as the strategy stuff. Has that also been some of the work for the major league roster throughout this winter, and then how does that work into the spring training plan?
Absolutely. We've been very, very, again, intentional. The best word that comes to mind about our individual and overall holistic approach to our offense. And you know, I mentioned it last year, and I think there's not a lot of patience for it. I understand that. I recognize that. We appreciate it. And what I mean is there's a learning curve to things. There's a you know, so offensively we're working through and still exploring, you know, individually, collectively, how we're competing, and we spend a lot of time working on it. And we've been able to get a better sense of what that looks like. Our players, Jeff, the continuity with there. We've added Packy Elkins to help be somewhat of a concierge to the players and help be a conduit to how we compete and continue to work on the synergy of what that looks like individually, you know, and then again, we do things collectively. So I'm really pleased with how we're going about it, and I'm pleased with the dialogue, the communication, and the ultimately the synergy that everybody's on the same page with how and where we're going.
We got feedback last year on our side stuff went throughout last year. What were things that you heard from players that maybe you were able to adjust a little bit going into this offseason?
Well, the good news is we have a you know, we're a living organism. So, and we wanted this thing, us, and how we work together with all the support staff that now exists in our baseball world, baseball development, and you know, performance, and obviously field, and all the technologies and measurables that are out there. You know, it's important that we are able to communicate more together. But as alluded to earlier, it's super important because the people we're here for are our players, and we work in concert with them, communicate with them, get their feedback. And I love how transparent everyone is about the greater good of us being great and us competing for another division championship and being 8 games better and win a World Series. So long answer to your question, we were able to get some good, honest feedback from players about what that looks like for them, what it looks like for us, and continue to work to get that to be a more consistent area where everybody's working together and hearing everybody, which they are. Specific to what that is, that's kind of in-house.
Right there.
Yeah.
Mike, what was this last week like for you? 1/10 of the people who didn't have your job were fired.
Right.
In relation to a scandal. I wondered how it played out for you watching from the sideline, but also if there was any reflection you had to do about maybe the pressure on your position or where that line is now for gaining an edge versus cheating.
It's a great question, and it's one that really, first of all, I'll say this. I'm very, very pleased from a baseball fan, from somebody that's obviously in the industry, of the action that the Commissioner's Office in Major League Baseball took and treated this issue very seriously and laid out appropriate, serious punishment. And you know, no one wants to see anything with the game that we all love in this room with a great deal of passion take a hit on any level. But I do appreciate and respect the fact of the protection of the game of baseball. And unfortunately, it's a reactionary thing that baseball reacted to appropriately. Speaking to reactionary, you know, as we have developed, and I've said this over the last several years, the game has developed and accelerated and changed. And it's interesting because people say in general, you know, baseball's so slow to change. So it's